You're listening to the GC Collaborative Podcast, a resource for the worship arts team at Grace Church.
Well, welcome everybody to this week's podcast, the GC Collaborative Podcast. We're so excited that you're joining with us today, and we are so excited that we have Shana and Kent in the room with us. We are going to talk about a fun topic, which we're going to tell a little backstory of. So some of you might have noticed that we did not release a podcast last month, and that's because we are talking about failure during this podcast. Yes, it's a very exciting topic that both of them were just so excited to talk about with us today. But we're talking about failure, and ironically, we recorded this podcast already back in January, but two of the mic cables just decided not to work. So ironically, we're talking about failure, and for the first time ever, we failed to put a podcast up. And so we're going to try again today to re-record it, and we're releasing it a month later. And these two were so gracious to come back in to re-talk, open up the same wounds again, talk about failure. And so, but it's going to be awesome. So Shana is at Grace Church. She has a business outside of Grace that she does photography and all kinds of stuff for weddings and everything else, which is amazing. But also for Grace, she oversees in pretty much every graphic you see she has made, which just continually amazes me that she can pump out that much stuff continually. And then Shana, if you want to give any more description to your job, that's obviously the very basic high-level version of it, but kind of what you do for Grace and what you do outside of Grace too, because I think you just have a very artistic mind, and it's pretty cool to see all the stuff you continually come out with.
It is for me too. Here at Grace now, I do graphic design and social media. So I think before I've talked about it as like whatever your eyeballs ingest, like during slides or social media, which we are all on all the time. So I oversee a lot of that and create a lot of that. Thankfully, we've got some volunteers that have come on board to help. So that's been great. But really anything that your eyes are settling into graphically, that's my job here. And then outside of physical Grace Church, I am primarily a wedding photographer, and I do graphic design and some interior design commercially, and for
I didn't either.
Yes, and
fantastic.
So my husband's always like, you cannot have any more jobs, and so he's like, how many jobs are we up to now? And so I have to pull back, but sometimes he's the one that actually connects me to things, and so Josh, it's your fault.
Yes.
But anyway, so I just my heart wants to make everything just so beautiful. Yeah. And so that's why I get, pulled in all these directions. And I'm blessed to be able to do that in many different ways. So
That's awesome. Very cool.
That's a good heart position right there.
Yeah.
My heart wants to make everything beautiful. I like that.
That is very nice. That should be like your business card.
Yeah.
Shana Wooley.
No,
but my business cards are so beautiful.
Well, see, there you go. It just adds to it. And then we also have Kent here. Kent is one of our pastors here at Grace. He is currently serving at the Olathe campus as a couple things.
So at the Olathe campus, I am the connections director there. And then I'm also the connections director for our campus support. So supporting all of our campuses.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we have Kent here because I don't know if we think about it all the time, but these guys come up with sermons every single week, from obviously pulling from scripture and just taking it and trying to just communicate it. And obviously there's artistry in that, to say the least. And so there's obviously times, I'm sure, where you walked away and you were like, oh my gosh, what just happened? Or somebody else might have told you that.
That's never
feedback.
That's never happened to me at all.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't even know why I'm here.
Oh, man.
No, absolutely. Although that's funny. It's interesting you put it that way. I've never really considered it to be art. But it is creation. I mean, it's creativity and all that. So
absolutely.
It's funny, but I've never really put that all together. But thanks.
No, that's why you got the invite to this.
Okay, that's why I'm here. Okay,
I thought it was just because he knew we were failing at things
I thought it was just a failure. I thought that's why I was invited.
That was literally the conversation. Who do we know fails
that are utter failures? Yeah,
a lot. No, honestly, we pulled you both because you both are creating so much, and in that, and I think, both of you know this, that the more you are doing things, the more there can be this perception of if you're doing it a lot, you're succeeding a lot, or you're just never mess up, right? And so I think it's actually the opposite. If you're doing it so much, you have failures that you have to deal with because you're just continually doing it. And then naturally, especially as you experiment or try different things, or, anytime you try something different, there's an element of failure that's possible. And so that takes a lot of courage, I think, from a speaking perspective to a visual artist perspective. And so really, I want to ask if you guys are willing to just share a story that you might have of one of those times that you either walked away and were like, oh, that was a failure, or somebody came up to you, or maybe like a massive group, just you felt like it just did not go well. So what is that story? And then how did you come out of it? Not even like the good coming out, because I think, maybe it was a huge, I could tell a story where I went home afterwards and just laid on the ground, I think, for 3 hours and rethought all of my life after this situation. So even that kind of stuff, because I think, like I said, a lot of people, they deal with the fact that I don't want to fail. And if I fail, then I'm going to be a failure, where in reality, it's no, actually, it can lead to learning and all that, obviously, which we'll get into later. But yeah, just a story, Shana, let's start with you, that maybe you have some situation like that.
Yeah, I actually have a really great situation that I learn from daily. How about that? So one of my first official on the job here in this graphic design position at Grace, I'm so excited, and I get to work on a piece for this big event for this really cool ministry that I think they do great work, and here at Grace. And hint, my kid is now part of this ministry, so it's students. And I just love what they do. It's so much energy, and it just, they have the potential to capture those kids in that range before they turn 18, right? So I'm just really excited about this thing. And so it's for a big kickoff event. I really put my heart into what's going to look great, what is going to resonate with these kids. And so I spend hours holed up on my iPad Pro drawing out this really cool graphic in kind of a Japanese street art style, just really neat. Okay. I'm still excited about it. Maybe one day we'll get to use it, but I'm here's this graphic, and I'm sending it off so happy, and crickets, right?
Yeah.
And so what was happening behind the scenes, I was getting crickets, but the feedback that was coming was no, you've totally, she missed it. We don't like this. And so when I did get, the feedback, I was really sad. How, but I did need to take a minute. That's hard, right? Because I am generally not as enthusiastic about some projects. I do them because they're, more of your day to day. But that one, guys, so excited about. So I had to take my puppy for a walk because it was hard. And I have learned over the years that I don't need to process that in that space, or go to work correcting, or on, making a new version or whatever. I just need to put it aside for a second and do something that actually does bring me joy, or get my mind off of the current situation. And I have also learned that I need to tell people around me that, hey, I need to take a walk, and I'm not pitching a fit.
Yeah.
I just need to take a walk. I need to get out of this. I need to get my mind right. And so, but not that it wasn't hurtful.
Yeah.
All those feelings and emotions were still there. But I just didn't need to sit in it. And that's something that I have had to train myself to do, is to put the project away. It's okay. Two, that it's not personal, right? We don't all dress the same. We don't all, listen to the same music. There's all kinds of things. And that's what makes the world so beautiful. Yeah. But I have to put it aside, and I have to then reconnect with something else. And so, that being said, I take a lot of walks with my dog, except when today it's like 2 degrees. So not today.
Hopefully you don't get any bad news today.
Right? I'm back on my treadmill downstairs. But yeah, so that was really hard for me. And so when I went back to it again, because that's the other thing that I think as artists, sometimes if we feel a feeling or an emotion of rejection, or in this case, failure, we put that thing aside and we never go back to it. We become scared to disappoint or wound ourselves, or like it's too hard to deal with. And sometimes like your greatest work is just on the cusp of that, right?
Yeah.
And
great point.
And so you can't just abandon those things, because that wasn't a like non-fruitful effort.
Right.
You can make of that what you want. And one of the things that I have learned through my many failures, Luke, is that you can't just stop, because the other part of being an artist is when you lock those things away and deny yourself that outlet, you're harming yourself, and you're actually denying like how you were created, right?
Yeah.
And so that to me in the past has also been hurtful and harmful, where if I didn't immediately succeed at something and I stopped because I'm like, I'm just not good at that, or gosh, I'm not going to be able to do this thing, then that's also not, I'm missing something in my creation, right? How God created me.
Yeah.
And so that's hurtful, and you take it out in a different way, right?
Yeah.
And so we're born to create, each one of us, in that, yes, you're born to fail sometimes,
Yeah.
and that's
Oh, yeah.
not bad. It actually strengthens you. You could take that as a, hey, I need to learn more about this skill. Or in this particular case, it wasn't that the skill set was off, because, I'm great. It is. It was.
I had to think about that for a second.
Yeah,
I was like,
I'm great.
That's amazing.
There was
I
a
love it.
relational piece
Yeah.
and a communication piece that was missing, and we're still working on that.
Oh, yeah.
To this day, because if you don't have communication, you don't have a relationship, you're going to like miss that trust aspect. And then still, guys, artists, me, it's not about me, right? Like, who's going to fix that? Who's going to create that? That's going to be God pouring into that circumstance. And so it's not about me and what I create. It is about honoring like the Lord and what he's given me, and how he's going to use this for his glory ultimately. So, things sometimes don't hit people's eyeballs in the way I want them to.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's not their fault.
Yeah.
It's not my fault. But I'm not going to take it personally. But I also am going to try again, because I want that to be glorifying. And I want, in that particular case, like, I wanted kids who've never been to Grace Church to come to Grace Church, because, like, it looked cool.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. And I think even, it's hard because people, like, especially with art, and I'm sure with sermons as well, like, people tend to be like, well, just separate yourself from it. Like,
Right.
and so I don't think that's necessarily the right call, because then you don't have any heart in it. So
Correct.
it's like you have to have heart in it for it to be vulnerable and for people to connect to it. But then you do have to find, and I think, in my personal opinion, the only way you can find it is by failing of, okay, how do I put my heart into this, but also, like, in a way, not put my identity into it?
That's the key.
And that's something where I think, thinking of myself earlier in life, I would try to figure out, like, how to do that without ever failing. But then through going through failure and walking honestly with it with the Lord and stuff like that, and him showing just different golden nuggets along the way, if you will, it was like, oh, okay, there is a way to have your heart in something, but also when people aren't accepting of it, it's not, I'm done. What am I doing with my life? I still sometimes go through that.
yeah. Well, because you literally are taking this piece of you, right? This,
Absolutely,
this,
yeah.
and you're holding it in your hands out to someone, and they're like turning their nose up at it, right? That's a really hard picture to come back from.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, if your identity is in the thing and not in who you are and whose you are,
Yeah.
you are going to want to cower in the corner and never come back out
Yeah.
or never show that side of you again. And you just have to come back from that time and time again, and it will get different. It doesn't get easy at any point, I don't think, because if it does, then like where there's you're on the other end of the spectrum where you just don't care anymore, because then it is, about
a little jaded and calloused.
So I do think, yes, it is more about your identity being in that piece of.
And I think you hit on it earlier too. It's understanding that because it is our identity, that whatever we're putting out there, it is a piece of us.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so it's hard to detach, like, okay, that's my identity separate from what I'm doing, because it's not. That's who I am, and I put all of me in that, and then I put it on public display. Like when artists, we're doing stuff for everybody to see, so it's not like in private and I've only got a couple people. But it's being able to, I think how you said it earlier was this idea that part of my identity is failure. I'm going to fail. Like that's part of the process of life, it's embracing that and
you need to do a
understanding.
sermon on that one right there.
That's
my
right.
gosh,
My
we could
identity is
unpack
going
that for like 2 hours. Stop it.
That's right. My identity is
awesome.
going to fail, but doesn't mean I'm a failure.
Right.
Yeah.
So
That's amazing.
yeah.
Yes.
Well, and I think too, and I've noticed this with you, and I feel like I have started to do this more in life too, where it's like you put something out there, and just because it's not accepted for that specific project, it's like, okay, like this could be used elsewhere later maybe, because I do think there's a season for things as well.
Yeah.
What I've noticed is it might not be now, but 5 years from now, like this might be something that is used for something. So I don't have to just throw it away because this particular project doesn't call for it. It's okay, I'll save it for later. And I've seen you do that just when we work together with things where it's like, if they don't like it, I'll just put it in the back burner and we'll use it for later because I really love it and want to use it on something. I think that too is something I wish somebody would have told me when I was younger, of like, hey, there's different seasons for things. Like if somebody doesn't like it, just put it on the back burner and there might be another time for it. Don't just crumple it up and throw it in the trash because you never know.
Yeah.
You know.
And the other part to that, Luke, is like now we live in a world where we're all kind of connected, right? Like in my secular job where I create logos and, things in that nature for businesses. Like I had this business and I made this like really, again, awesome, like, yes, this is exactly like I make them do this extensive questionnaire and I bring this to them and I am like so excited about it. And they were like, no. But and I was really like, what? How? And I did go back. Here's the hard part. I did go back and say, where did I miss the mark? And it was good and bad for me to hear. Like it was hard to hear things, but in the end, like what they ended up with, like with someone else, was basically what I gave them, which was weird.
Oh, wow.
But I don't think that they were in the place to receive it, right?
Yeah.
But the neat thing is, I went out and was able to sell that digitally. Some, who knows who's got it, right?
Yeah.
But maybe it wasn't right for them, but it was right for this other,
Absolutely.
entity, and they didn't, they needed that. So what you're doing now and you're presenting to this audience may not be the purpose. What is sometimes what I have to remind myself. So just because I was given this inspiration to make this piece, it might not be in the time frame right now, or it may not be the audience for that right now. So again, you don't just give up or lock it away. Like have it accessible and, present it maybe to a different arena. Because I think it's needed. I don't think that you were just given that inspiration for no reason.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Great point.
That's good. Kent,
Sir.
you got any story of failure?
Do I have any story?
Well,
I have stories.
We got as much time. I think we're allotted 4 hours a
4
month
hours?
on
I'm not sure that'll be enough time, but
Buzzsprout contract. So you can go as long as you want.
and he lost our other one. So.
That's true. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, that's New Mercies, guys.
Yeah,
Come on,
let's
we already
move
mentioned
on
it
from
at the
that
beginning.
failure.
Let's cleanse our palate.
I think it's funny because it's in what I do in speaking and preaching and all that. It's kind of how you define failure. So if you're defining failure as, if everyone doesn't like what I say, then that's a failure. Well, that's a wrong approach. And so, but I've had several times where I've thought what I'm getting ready to say here might might land in the Smithsonian somewhere. I mean, this is gold. This is brilliant. And just to have it just like a thud land, And
I'm glad preachers think that too, and not just the artists.
No, like you go, which tells you right. If you have that thought going into it, it tells you right away that you're in the wrong place.
Get thee behind me, Satan.
Exactly. It's like, man, who are you doing this for?
That's awesome.
So, but yeah, I've had so many examples go awry, things that I thought, especially with students. I spoke to students for a number of years, and the older I got, the more distant I got culturally. And, I remember once, not too long ago, I had just been to the Evel Knievel Museum in Topeka, Kansas, which is probably the highlight of Topeka. I don't know.
Didn't even know that existed.
The Capitol is there also.
Well, the Capitol is there, but the highlight is the Evel Knievel Museum. So just a shout out to all those that need to get out there. But so Evel Knievel to me as a kid growing up, hero. Yeah. Like I had all the toys. I was in dreamland there. Yeah. And then it struck me like there's a message coming up. This is it. There's an Evel Knievel example. It's going to tie in beautifully. I'm gonna thread Evel Knievel.
This is what I was created for.
That's right. I mean, it was as if God came down in that moment and just enlightened me. And so I'm so fired up about this message. I get there. I'm going to thread Evel Knievel throughout this entire message. So it's not just like one example. He is the line that's going to take us to the end. And so as I'm talking about Evel Knievel up front, I'm just getting blank stares. And I'm like, and I've got pictures of Evel Knievel up on the thing, and the kids are looking and they're just kind of just staring off, like, well, I don't. And I'm like, oh, hold up, Evel Knievel, like you all know who Evel Knievel is, right? Nobody knew who Evel Knievel. Like it was just, and now I'm at the beginning of the message. I'm like, okay, where do I go from here?
Oh boy.
So,
oh my gosh, that's priceless.
And there have been. There's hundreds of times where that's happened, stuff like that, or times where I have I call them outer body experiences, where I know in the moment things are going south. Like, I don't know what I'm saying. Things are coming out of my mouth. I'm like, where did that come? And so I'm literally outside of my body yelling at myself, what are you doing? Yeah. Pull it together, man. Come on, brother. Sorry. And and you finish that and you're just like, I don't even know what that was. I don't know if anyone heard a thing. Mm-hmm. Interestingly enough, though, I think it's in those times where I've heard people come up and share with me like, wow, man, that was great. Thank you so much. And that God really spoke to me out of that. I'm thinking, how in the world did God, which tells me right there really what it's all about. Yeah. And it's not about me.
Yeah.
And so if I understand that this is a calling and God's called me to this, and I think if you know that, you can endure failure all day long.
Yeah.
If this is what God's called me to do, and I know that, and I'm trying to go into it with a pure attitude and a pure motive, and and that doesn't always happen. Yeah. But if I'm up there in that, it doesn't matter what happens after that.
Yeah.
Because then God can take that and do what He needs to do.
Well, and I think I don't know if I'm going to say this correctly, but I think from a stage perspective in a church, I do think there's a certain level of when people see. I think sometimes people need to see failure on stage at a church, because I think psychologically, if everything's just always so perfect, it comes across as, oh, well, there's no, like, these people are perfect almost. Yeah. And so not that we shoot for failure,
right?
But I think there's a level of, like you were saying, in the creation and who we are, there's failure. And I think people know that. But in our world today, it can seem like, especially with social media and all these things, it's always the best looking part of who we are, which that's not all bad. I think there's a level of, fine, it's okay. But I think when coming to church, I know in the times where I felt like things have failed. I remember one time we had a vocalist on stage and their voice went out. And couldn't sing their song, and so somebody else stepped in and just sang it. It was a male to female, so the key was completely different. Like, it was a failure from a musical perspective. Yeah. And somebody came up later and said, oh my gosh, like, that was just I needed that. That was such a picture of when one of us can't accomplish something, somebody else comes alongside and helps us. And like where I'm at in life, pretty much like I just needed to see that picture. Yeah. And so it's just things like that where I think people, it gives in a weird way, and I don't know how to say this exactly, but it gives people this feeling of like, oh, it's okay to be human.
Sure.
Connects.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I think like even from a sermon perspective or, worship, and once again, just like a stage kind of feeling, I think I always talk about this with worship guys is we don't strive to fail, but if you do fail, it's okay. Because also I think people can see how we treat it with grace sometimes. And I think Grace Church is always great at that. But when failure happens, to not just, destroy somebody, but to say, okay, how do we help pick them back up and come alongside of them and deal with that, which once again in the world tends to be dealt with differently versus, hopefully the way Jesus calls us to do things.
I like to interject. I think that sometimes that that's our responsibility too. Like even if we're the one that like our message wasn't, the right example for that time or whatever, like it's our burden to also extend grace in the circumstance to not only ourselves but to the circumstance, right? And that's super duper hard because then you're already, there's so many levels of emotion. But above all, that's the biggest thing too, is to extend grace to us and to the situation and to whatever else is going on. So I think that's super important.
That's such a great point, Guy. I think in what we're doing in this context, we're talking about kingdom work, and so when you're talking about kingdom work, there's like this extra level of, I don't want to say pressure, but just the idea that this has an eternal impact, and so I don't want to let God down. I don't want to let other people down. I don't want, because there's a ripple effect that's spiritual and eternal, and so I think there's that added weight to it. And then, like you said, to give yourself grace, I think to embrace it. You said you sometimes have to get away from it and to walk the dog or, do whatever. I can't do that. Like there's for some reason I can't separate. Like I have to process through it to get away from it. Like it's not going to go away. I know just the other night we did an event and I spoke through the event, and afterward I just felt like it was a failure, and I think there's a couple different reasons for that, but I had to go home and literally for a few hours just work through it before I could come out on the other side and then be normal again, so but I think in doing kingdom work there's also another element, a spiritual element of attack that comes. And so I think a lot of that particular example from the other night, the discouragement I was feeling was from another source, and I was being attacked from the enemy on that. And
absolutely.
So
I'm glad you addressed that. Like, I do think that is an unspoken in anything, especially if we are out there being the light to this world. And so I feel that not as much here. I don't know, because I feel like in my kingdom work, like I do have much more support spiritually. Like I just feel safer in that work. But when I'm out like doing a wedding and, maybe they're not believers and that's fine. We're there to pray ahead of that situation, and we're there like when things go wrong that like it's not even my fault. Like the cake looks bad or was destroyed or something was damaged or whatever. Like our job is to then in that case push through it and help and have grace, but also know that like there is that attack that's coming in that circumstance for this family or whatever's happening, and that we're there to like pray and fight through that with them. But I think that's a good point and could be a whole nother podcast for you, Luke.
We got 3.5 more hours, guys. Just kidding.
But that's a really good point, though. The attacks that come that, you know.
That are, and that's just going to pile on whatever personal discouragement you might already have.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so you really have to pray through it and first of all, embrace it and then pray through it and try to recognize, okay, is this where's this coming from?
Yeah, absolutely.
And here's another thing that helps me anyway to help process through, because usually I'm my worst critic. I think everyone usually is, any artist is. And then, so you have to then remove that voice that's telling you all the negative things that it's telling you, which is usually your voice. Now, it could be the enemy's voice as well, jumping on board with you and saying, yeah, you are stupid. You are terrible. That was the worst thing I've ever seen. To be able to depart from that and say, okay, wait, how does God view me?
Yeah.
Does God say this about me? Does he think I'm stupid? Does he think I'm and to really get back to truth and to get a vision of God's vision of me.
Right.
And that starts to become restorative. Now I can move back into a space of light and grace and forgiveness and love, and then go forward. You know? And then really embrace the failure from there and say, okay, well, cool. Now we can learn from this and go forward in love. So
is that how you? I was going to ask you this earlier. Is that so? Your description of how you kind of dealt with the event the other night, is that how you generally deal with, like, when you feel like, oh, this failed or this bombed? You get away and kind of just process through it. Is that how you tend to deal with it?
I do typically, and it's usually on my own, although I include my wife in it. I don't know if that's for good or bad. She's like, oh gosh, again.
That's amazing.
And usually that's so someone can pray with me. Someone can be on board with me. But yeah, it's getting to that place of back to where my God space. And out of that place of darkness or that place of lies and back to a place of truth. And, the truth is, might it have been a failure for however we want to define it or whatever it was? Sure, but I have to get back to that space of love and grace so I can move forward in what God's called me to do. Because if I live in that space, I'm no good for anybody.
Yeah,
and so.
But I think you bring up a good point, which is another good, kind of thing to talk about, is community in artistry.
That's what I was raising my hand over here.
Oh, I didn't see it. I'm sorry. I was so locked in on Kent. I didn't even see it. No, but I think that is a huge, and speak to that, because I do think other people's, like when I look at my life and where I've gotten and, whatever, it's, man, if I didn't have other people combating the lies sometimes to speak truth into me as an artistic person, I think I would have given up at some point. And so in both photography and graphic design, to have a community of people that you trust, and trust not only to just say, gosh, you're great, that's great, right? Yeah. That's fun. But someone who's like, that's not quite working, or you may need to tweak that, or hey, let's start over, and that you can do that with each other, right? It's not just one-sided pouring into Kent or Luke or me, but we're pouring back into each other, and we're able to, because that community has the trust, who has the grace, that we can take that and give that feedback. Because for sure, everything that I do, not just that one graphic that I thought was really cool, it has to help other ministries. Yeah. And just because I see things a certain way doesn't mean that that's the right way. And you need that community to be a check, not only for your work, but for your spirit, for your heart, for your emotions, for your health, all of those things. And sometimes that is very, very hard to find. Yeah.
And so what I would challenge, because I mentor a lot of photographers outside of the church, and it's always I'm so lonely. There's not a community, or it's really cutthroat. And I came out of the Nashville area, which is, full of artists, and it was really hard to be a photographer in Nashville. But to come here and not know anyone, guess what? I had to create that community.
Yeah.
And so it was on me. It wasn't going to be delivered to me. If there's something you're longing for, like that community, you can create that.
Yeah.
Because you'll be connected, especially in the church. If you're on worship, you're connected with other artists. If you're in the teaching realm, you're going to be connected with other teachers. You're not just a solemn person.
Right.
You're not the only one that has that gifting, right? And so it is cool that you can create that, but you need that desperately to not feel isolated.
Yep. the circle of trust. You do need those.
Do not be removed.
You gotta stay in the circle of trust. You do need those people who can, and it is a circle. I mean, it's a tighter group of people around you that will speak the truth in love.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And they're going to show you grace, but they're also going to be honest.
Yeah.
You know, and that's critical. So.
Well, and I think that's the piece of when they do. You know, when you are so hard on yourself or you are beating yourself up, it's bringing them in that you know they're not just going to say something to make you feel good, but it's like, no, this is the truth of who you are, who your identity is in. And I think, I just know for me, having those people in my life, it's like, man, because I think we all can beat ourselves up. Like you said, we're our worst critics. And if you live, and I've seen people who are just live in those thoughts and like the turmoil they're in, the lack of ability to create even because those thoughts are just so big in their mind, and to just show like, hey, you have value. You like God wants you to use these gifts, and like just because you failed, like it's such a freeing thought. Because they've just been so stuck in the negative. And it's not even a matter of like, hey, you're going to create something great. Who knows? Like, we never know.
Right.
You go on that journey and find out if it's good or not. But yeah, then, and the other crazy thing with art and even sermons that I always think of is sometimes they're rejected in their time, but then after the person dies, like all of a sudden,
oh my
you know
goodness.
what I mean? And that's a whole nother level of, you know what I mean?
So what you're saying is after I'm dead...
People will love that Evel Knievel reference.
Like some of the most
So if I wait till then, I'm basically going to fail till then.
Yeah, so record all your sermons now.
Yeah.
But some of the most culturally changing things didn't change culture until after the creator passed away because they were so revolutionary. People didn't understand it. And so that's also another factor that it's like art and even preaching is just a hard thing to gauge because you might say something that like, you know, I'm reading a book right now about the... oh gosh, is it Jeremiah? I should know because I'm reading the book about him. But Jeremiah and the prophet, right, of the Old Testament, and those prophets said some really hard things to digest, which in their culture were not accepted.
Yeah.
But then obviously, like that's what God used to move those cultures, and so it's a hard thing. That's always the hard thing is just because it's not accepted in its current state doesn't mean it's not going to be used, so you almost have to like, what's the filter for success? What you were saying earlier.
I think too with artists, you know, it's a lot of times you're on the cutting edge of innovation, right? So you're on the front of the bell curve, which there's a small percentage of people who are accepting of that, right? And you're leading people into a new space, and you're going to face resistance. So it may not be failure; it might just be. People aren't ready for that yet, you know? So,
but I also want to like touch on two things that you both bring up. Like,
go for it.
One,
you got 3.5 more hours.
We're just gonna be here until lunch. One is you're gonna fail. You're not gonna be automatic. Like you're not a savant. Right? So you're going to have to keep doing this, and hopefully you're getting better and you're doing this thing over and over, whether it's speaking, crafting, creating, singing, right? But there's that book, the Gladwell book, right? The Outliers, and he's talking about 10,000 hours. I really am starting to believe that there's something to that, right? Because you have to, if you're just perfect, you're not going to get better.
Yeah.
Like, how can you? So if you think that, then like, okay, there's no room to grow. There's no room to expand. There's no room. But you have to. Like, if I had just picked up a camera when I picked up a camera at 2, and was automatically like the best photographer in the whole world, right? And now we're in the era of digital, like, where would I have been? Because I never would have gotten better. Yeah. So that's something else. Like, just to treat failures as just that next, like, that's the investment of time if you buy into that, you know, that length of whatever. Yeah. Because I do think that as we mature in our craft, we get more confident in our craft, and we learn to communicate or get better information to create those things, right?
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
That's the number one. And then I just want to touch on number 2 for an artist, and sometimes people who work in a church too. What you're doing is probably not what, like, my family like, I was supposed to be a doctor. And so, like, you're already kind of feeling like you're behind, or you're a renegade, or you're not worthy, or you're already a failure because you didn't live up to this expectation that society or your family or, whatever, because there's still that, like, you're an artist or you're a teacher, or that's lower than or less than. And so you're already starting off feeling that less than. Yeah. And so to be cautious of that cultural tape or that's playing that's already making you feel a certain way about what you're doing, and to overcome that, again going back to the identity piece, because you were created this way, and you can try as you might, but that's if you're trying to go a different direction and you're denying the gifting, then you're not fulfilling that either. So
absolutely.
Just to know that because you are seen a certain way by like a family or society, you're not less than.
Oh yeah. Well, I think no matter what. First off, I totally relate to you. I was supposed to be a Zamboni driver, and that didn't work out. So
wow, I need to know about that.
Not a doctor necessarily, but Zamboni driving was in the cards.
Was that in your family? Like
it's a long story. I don't want to get into it. Anyways.
Hurts to talk about it. I got it.
Well, we're performers, and so Zamboni drivers come on the ice in the middle of hockey games, and everybody loves the Zamboni driver.
Who doesn't love the Zamboni driver?
Yeah, nobody hates the Zamboni driver, so the performance side of the Lauber family just clings to it. I'm just kidding. Sorry. We'll cut that out later. No, I just totally forgot what I was going to say. Oh, man. Oh, art. I agree. So here's the thing I always think about art that I try to kind of process, and because art can kind of seem like this, oh, that's cute. Like you go do your music thing, you go do your photography thing, you go do your even Christianity preaching thing. And so it's kind of this, that's cute of you to want to do that. Let the business guys take over kind of feeling that we can have as artists. And what's really, because I don't ever meet an artist that doesn't wake up every day wanting to change the world in some way, shape, or form with what they create. Like that's just, I think, how we are molded in some way. We want to make something that affects people. And so, but the thought that can get to us is this important? Is this changing anything? Is this really affecting anything? And one thing that I, once again, try to process and figure out in my own life is they really felt the same way about Jesus when he came. It was, they thought he was going to be this great conqueror, this great guy who's going to destroy Rome, and instead he took this thing, love, really, and died for everyone. And this concept of love is, once again in the especially in those times, it's kind of like, yeah, that's cute. You love somebody, or you're showing somebody love. Well, this guy can, or this army is brute force, destroy everything. So brute force was kind of the sought after power, if you will, of the day. And instead he showed power through love and ultimately redeemed humanity. And so I think the same way sometimes with art and preaching and these things of like, oh, that's cute. Like, go do that. That's nice. That's like a hobby. But really, if you look at societies, even outside of the Christian realm, like rock and roll in communist countries, like explodes because it changes society and it changes the trajectory. And so art does that in a world. And so I think as Christians and as artists, we have such an ability to, I always say, like even with worship songs, like it's surprising to me how you have to be careful with the songs you sing, because your church starts to actually go that direction. Your people start to go that direction. And so it's, well, what do we want our people to kind of go after? Because whether we like it or not, they'll start to go that direction off of what we're singing. And so there's just a level of realizing like there's such a power, and it's not this recognizable mental power, but it's this thing that hits people's hearts. Sermons are the same way. It hits people's hearts that we can't quantify, we can't define, but it's there. And so even that takes a level of faith, and I'm sure with sermons as well, where it's just like, well, God, I'm just going to trust that you're taking this and doing what you want with it. And sometimes it could be nothing. Sometimes it could be a lot. That's not up to me. And
exactly.
Like, and that's the thing with Jesus, which we're not Jesus, but I always look at, and it's like, he never really got with the disciples beforehand and was like, hey, like, what do you think about this? Like, if I say this, do you think people will like, it's like, he just said it and what God did with it. Now, granted, he's Jesus, we're not, so let's take that into account. But I do think there's a certain level as artists and creators and of any form is do your best with what you know, but put it out there, and God's going to do what He's going to do with it.
And I think if you know you're called to it, you're created for it, and God's called you to it, and B, you know that you've surrendered yourself to the Lord in it, right? So I'm completely given over to what God's trying to do in this moment, or through this piece, or through this message, or whatever it is. Then the results aren't your problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you've totally just been humble about it and gone into it, then it's kind of like speaking the gospel. We're told to speak the gospel, and the results are not our issue.
Yeah.
Now, if we totally misrepresent the gospel, that's another story.
Yeah.
But if we go into it humbly and we do it the way that we've been, called to do it, then in the end, it's on what God does through that, and that's on Him and on the receiver. So,
which I think is, I think is kind of freeing, because then it's like, okay, I'm not worried about the result of this. I'm just going to create it, which then I think certain people are like, but then you're going to get lazy. But I have found that you actually don't get lazy. You actually, because you're passionate about it, you just naturally want to get better and grow. But it's not out of, well, I want everybody to like it. It's more out of just, I love doing it. Like, I love being good at this,
Right.
Well, you mentioned two guys, Jeremiah and Jesus. If we're going to go by results, well, they're utter failures.
Yeah.
I mean,
Jesus is a
nobody
prime
likes
example of things succeeding after he died.
That's right. Right? Same with Jeremiah. I mean,
absolutely.
Those guys, nobody liked those guys.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus did come back to life. Let's clear the record on that.
For him. Right, yeah. Okay, so good, but
don't want to be called a heretic after this.
That's right.
Just kidding.
But there's so much grace here.
Yes, thank goodness.
But I do, like you said that, I've seen the opposite happen where people, I'm doing, I work in a church, or I work in this, and I'm just doing this because this is what I'm called to do. And you forget that you're supposed to do your best.
That's right.
Yeah.
And give it the effort, because you are doing it to glorify, right?
Yeah.
And in whatever your work is, whether it is artistic or not, if you're home and you're mothering, to do it to the glory of God and to give it your best. And that's not dial it in today, right?
Yeah.
It's give it your best. And that when you are giving it your best, I think you are, it's easier. It sounds hard because you're giving all this effort, but it is easier when you fail because you have given it your best.
True. That's absolutely true. Yeah.
I'm processing that. That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the, I think, to me, I've learned it's where is the motivation coming from? Because you can be doing the same thing and it feels so hard and so complicated, just because of the motivation of it and the heart of it versus, like I used to always, because for most of my life growing up in like high school, I would practice guitar for hours by myself. So that way when I got in front of people, I wasn't going to mess up. I did not want to mess up. And so that's kind of the mentality I grew up with, was do everything behind closed doors. And then when it's ready, you present it.
Ta-da.
And everybody should be impressed, you know, good, better, and different. And then as I grew up, I realized, like, even just working in a church or working on a team, you can't keep things closed off from people. Like, you have to let them in, you have to, or else they feel abandoned and, confused, which is never good on a team.
Well, they don't, you don't have that community that we talked about.
Yeah, exactly. And so letting people into that process, and I think it's, just learning how to figure out how to do that over and over, again and again, because there is this level of, well, I want my presentation to be perfect, that we can deal with. And then, but coming to the place of, actually, one of my favorite quotes is a guy, John Mark McMillan, wrote How He Loves. Once I heard him say, every album I create is just a photograph of where I'm at in life. And so it's not meant to be it's not meant to be perfect. It's just meant to show like where I'm at this point in life. And so that mentality of, you're always going to look back at something you preached or created and be like, oh, like, I wish I could redo that. Or, you see the imperfections, hindsight 2020. But I think that's the beauty of it, is you are growing. You never arrive. And I think that was another freeing thought I had, is like, I haven't arrived, and that's okay.
Right.
I'm never going to until the day I die, pretty much. But realizing that life is a continual journey. It's a continual process of the beauty of failure and death in certain areas that you try so hard hard to bring to life. Mm-hmm. But then as well, like, and I love Tim and Grace has many stories of this, of like failures that actually produced fruit and things down the line and I think that's another aspect of failure that we didn't even get into, but
we still have 3 hours.
We still do.
Yeah.
We still have 3 hours. Yeah, you are right. But it's and actually, do you have any stories of that? Now that I think about it, of a failure that happened that actually produced some kind of fruit or something later that you were like, oh my gosh, this never would have happened if this failure didn't happen?
I think that happens a lot in my wedding photography, honestly. Mm-hmm. So, and not just like me behind the camera, but like things on a wedding day. Like, Luke, I was there for yours, right? Mm-hmm. And like yours was wonderful.
I see your photos every day all over my walls. But they are beautiful.
But the approach in that, for me, this is a metamorphic story, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you come out of this artist. Like, I have a degree in, photography, and like you got to produce and you got to be this award-winning blah blah blah, right? Mm-hmm. And I bought into that. And I wasn't winning the award, and I wasn't getting, published in this magazine. And I had to change my approach. So out of that failure, like, was that really what was going to make me feel good?
Yeah.
And now, like, I might cry because I look at, like, your wedding day and your photos, and it's not about me getting you published in a magazine. It's that you will love and cherish, and you'll see yourselves on your wedding day, and you'll see joy, or you'll see that moment, or you'll see your grandparents. You'll see, like, that's the last time you got to hug this person. And that is honestly what matters. And that came out of, like, to this day, I will proudly say I have not been published in a magazine, but that's not what it's worth. That's not what it's about. That's not why I do it. It is so that you can look back and show your legacy. And so I remove myself from that, but that was really hard for me to learn. But now I think that's the thing that makes what I do stand out. Yeah. Because it's not there to be perfect. Like, I'll tell you, hey, like, just move over a little bit before we do this, but it's not to pose you. I don't tell you what to do.
Yeah.
I want that to happen organically. I want to be a spectator, and I want to document and tell your story versus I'm doing this so I can get published and win all the, like, what the heck does that even matter?
Yeah.
But that's from failing or feeling like I was a failure for so many years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I think everybody deals with that pressure, even now with speaking. I think with the internet and stuff like that, I think as preachers, as anybody, because what you create or your content, however you want to put it, you can put it so everybody can see it. Whether it be YouTube, Instagram, podcasts, whatever. There's so many platforms that there is a level of creating something to be so perfect or so good that everybody watches it or clings on to it. And so I do think there's an added pressure that really we as artists and we as Christians have to navigate, because it's only existed in the last 10 to 15 years of what is success, and is success, because a lot of younger guys and girls I talk to, like, their success is the more views they get, the better,
right?
And that's in the church world. That's not just outside.
Yeah.
And so it's us as older people who have done this to help guide those things, because I think those are huge lessons in freedom. It's a very freeing thing, like what you were talking about earlier in that as well, where it's this idea that frees you from all of this, I think, pressure that really isn't godly. It's of the world, it's of darkness, whatever you want to call it, but realigning to, okay, like, what is the purpose of this? And why did God create this thing, and why did he create me to do it, and what is the meaning of that?
Yep.
And answering that question for all of ourselves, which I think is hard in today's world. Like,
because people go, like, how many Instagram followers do you have? Or,
absolutely.
Or what? Yeah. And I just, like, I can't anymore.
Which can be a driver, and it can be a pressure that people put on themselves, which is like, man, what are you giving your life to that in a way?
It's a lot what you see the disciples going through this in the book of Acts of, do we please men or do we please God?
Yeah.
And so if it's all about the accolades and that's easy to fall into, man, when you're putting stuff out there for public consumption, and then you're not getting the feedback that at least you think you should get or that you want to get. It's easy to fall into the, oh man, and then, but you got to step back and say, okay, wait, who am I in this for? What's this? Yes, I want people to grow. Yes, I want people to benefit from this. I want them to be blessed. I want them to draw closer to God as a result. But I can't wait for that compliment to come my way to feel better about me or better about what I just did. Yeah. I have to know that I'm pleasing the Lord.
Yeah.
And so,
is there any failure or like kind of death to something that created fruit in your life that at the time you were just like, oh my gosh, this is so detrimental?
I think from a speaking standpoint, I've been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
And so there have been a couple things where I've realized, like over the years, you grow, you mature, that snapshot of your life back then or whatever, what you knew, realizing that you were wrong about some stuff.
Yeah.
So being able to come back later and say, okay, what I said back there, it's recorded for all time. That was inaccurate. That was wrong.
I do have a question about this. Is more, maybe I should ask you this off the mic because this is more of a personal thing. Because I think even so for me, there was a lot of well-meaning people who taught me a lot of really wrong things, I think, about the Bible.
Yes.
And so for me, as a worship leader, sometimes I don't like, and I've just kind of started to uncover this in my life and this fear, but I don't say things sometimes because I'm like, well, what if this is wrong? And I become that person that is well-meaning, but says something, on a microphone in front of a room that then later I'm like, oh gosh, like that was not accurate. And it could be, it might be a theological thing or whatever about God that I'm so dead sure about. And then later, so I'm actually curious from a personal level, like how you kind of deal with that.
So there's obviously regrets because you might have been sharing whatever that thing was, that idea, that truth that you thought was true. And so you might have steered a lot of people in a direction that wasn't the right direction. And so there's regret, there's guilt, and you've got to process all that and give that back to the Lord and say, okay, you know what? Give yourself the grace, give yourself a break,
absolutely.
But then try to move forward in truth in the right way and say, and own it and be able to come clean with it. And then understand that, man, I'm a work in progress too. God's doing all this in me too. And that's another thing about what I do is that if it's not being done in me and through me, then it's hard for me to talk about it. So one of the lessons I've been learning all along is, and the failures that I've had is that I'm talking about something that's not my experience. So if it's not my experience, I'm not going to talk about it. Or if it's something I don't understand, I want to make sure and commit to that. Like, hey, this isn't my experience, but let me tell you what this is what I'm understanding about it or whatever. But when I share something, I want that to be a shared experience, not just information. And so
that's good.
But trying to come back from all that, owning your stuff, knowing that you made a mistake, and then just trying to march on. And I reserve the right to be wrong. Yeah. And that's just, I don't know everything. Yeah. And I never will. Certainly not about the Bible. And anyone so I'm fully embracing my lack of expertise. It's a divine book, and I'll never figure it all out. So well,
that's a good place to be, because people who do act like they know it all scare me. So.
Yes, right on.
But in everything, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Like,
they make me really
everything.
nervous. Not like intimidated. I just am like, there's something not right here.
Yes.
I don't like it. So no, that's really good though. It's so true, because I think even with speaking in the Bible, and you're so right, we are all walking with the Lord, figuring out who He is and how. And there are just times. I mean, I can count multiple times in my life that I look back at something that I believed was so true, so much passion, and the Lord, through His grace, like just took me through things and showed me like, this is not who I am, you know? And it's, once again, very freeing and awesome. But at the same time, you're like, oh man, like I thought that was so true. Everything within me. And so, but yeah, that's really good. So, well, we are hitting the end of the podcast.
Sadness.
3.5 hours goes fast.
We're 4 hours in now. So funny. But I did want to just thank you guys. This was awesome. This was just encouraging, honestly, for me, and just thinking about things. And I really, just thanks for coming in on it. One, doing it to redoing it. So this was awesome. Thank you guys.
Pleasure.
And I think we kind of went to some level different directions, which was really cool too. So I think it was a little bit of a different conversation, which is awesome. So thank you guys for coming in, being honest about failure. I know that's not always easy, but it also shows your maturity in being able to just talk about it. Yes.
And I think this was an example of overcoming failure for Kent and myself, but also you, Luke.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
I hope it was cathartic for you, Luke. I hope this
It
was.
really was.
Yeah.
It was a complete. This was the flower that came out of the death of the earlier. So this was my failure that produced greater fruit. How's that? No.
Love it.
And that's where it ends. No, I'm just kidding. But thank you guys so much for listening as well this month. We're just excited, and we're excited for this year and the conversations we're getting to have. We hope they bless you. You guys were awesome. Thank you seriously so much for coming in. Blessed me already.
Pleasure.
And we will see you next month. Have a great month, guys. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the GC Collaborative Podcast. If you have any questions or would like more information, check us out at visitgracechurch.com.